know Elizabeth, oh, president of the
Sorry.
Inverness Botany Group, and she's given me a few biographical notes just to fill in how she became interested in botany. Elizabeth first got interested in flowers going out on walks with her mother using the Observer's Book of Wild Flowers, which I'm sure we all know. And then carried on with an interest in flowers, but not taking it to any great level until she met Faye and they went sea kayaking. And as Elizabeth said, she was bowled over when they would get out of their kayaks on some remote shore, and Faye would start naming the plants that she knew. So that encouraged Elizabeth to come along and join the botany group about 7 years ago. And no, wait a minute, no, she joined the botany group sometime before that and became a member of the committee 6 or 7 years ago and has been president for 5 years, which is in excess of the statutory term. So we're all looking for anybody else who'd like to to take over when Elizabeth retires as president. But anyway, tonight she's here to give us all a talk, which I'm sure will be very interesting, about her recent trip to Slovenia to look at the wildflowers there as part of the, I cannot pronounce it, Bohemia Wildflower Festival. So if I can, as Audrey said, remind everybody to mute, and we'll hand over to Elizabeth and hope that she can share her screen and tell us all about the flowers of Slovenia. Over to you, Elizabeth.
But anyway, everyone, I'm afraid apologies for all the carefully constructed notes I made. I can't see any of them. So apologies for that. What I'm going to talk to you about is give you a tasting of the flowers that I saw in Slovenia when I was there uh, last year. So now I realise it's now last year. Now, so bear with me. So the first thing is, where is Slovenia? Well, I didn't actually know where Slovenia was, even though we decided to go there. I kept getting it mixed up with Slovakia. But as you can see, it's bounded by these countries. It's only got a little tiny bit of coastline. This is my drawing here. Tiny bit of coastline, 46 kilometers on the Adriatic, and apart from that, it's completely landlocked. Um, some facts about Slovenia. First of all, it's about the size of Wales. Everything seems to be, a lot of things are either the size of Wales. So it's about the size of Wales. It's a fairly small country. It's one of the smallest European countries, I think. It's about the same population as Wales as well, with 2 million. The language they speak is Slovene, and it's a Slavic language with all sorts of improbable consonant combinations. So I found it very difficult to pronounce anything, and I only managed to learn please, thank you, and hello. But thankfully, everyone we met spoke English, or at least mostly, and a few just understood it. But certainly, it was very easy to get around because of that. And it was appeared to be a very prosperous country with very well developed public transport network. Um, so a few notable Slovenians. I'm not going to try and pronounce their names. Donald coached me in it, but I've forgotten it all. So we'll just say them. So the first one, the chap on the left, it's a chap, and it's quite interesting to find four famous Slovenians, but who at the point I wrote her, but I thought of four. Trying who would I put down as four famous Scots? I couldn't remember. Anyway, the first one became the first person in 2000 to ski completely down Everest. The second one is more of a household name, at least in our household, as he has won the Tour de France and for the fourth time just last year. The third one, I think, is more of a household name, someone that we didn't really don't want to mention in our household. And neither did the only Slovenian when we asked her we asked this woman about Melania Trump. She wouldn't want to talk about her either. And the fourth person is he's allegedly the world's best known living philosopher. And he writes both popular and serious philosophy books. And my partner Donald has actually read some of his articles in the London Review book, so he's popular to a limited extent. I did about the history. I'm giving you a bit of background because I never knew where it was or anything about it, so I thought you might like to know. It has gone through a very tumultuous background. In fact, until it became a republic in the when it was 2001, I think. No, 1991, had never been an independent nation. So it starts off, and it's obvious, so it's gone through all of these different history. I mean, even though it's never been independent, written Slovene dates back to 970. So it's a long time been, I think 85% of the people who live in Slovenia now are native Slovenes. So it's not a country where there's been a lot of, although there's been a lot of occupation of it, there's not been a lot of movement in immigration, I suppose. So it became an independent nation in 1991 and a kind of soft, after the breakup of the communist regime, and there wasn't an awful lot of fighting. I don't think as a country where it's not got a big coastline, I don't think it's got much in the way of mineral wealth and assets. So maybe they just let it go because it wasn't worth keeping it. So next on to the geography, and this is maybe a little bit why it's more interesting for us. First of all, it's the most forested country in the EU after Finland and Slovenia. And the forestry covers more than 58% of the land mass. And if you then add on land which in the last 20 years has reverted due to agricultural changes, and it's now 66% of the landmass is covered in trees. I would say there's just trees everywhere, forest everywhere. Much of the forest exhibits a kind of karst type landscape due to the limestone and dolomite rocks formation, covering a large proportion of the Slovenia surface. And the word karst, which is used as a tribal landscape, is actually comes from a Slovenian word kras. That's maybe not how to pronounce it, but Kras. So that's the Slovenian word itself. So that gives you an indication of the dominance of that rock formation in the country. So you can see with the extensive mountain ranges, the extensive limestone, you've got a country with an amazing range of flowers, impressive cave systems, and kind of glorious mountain environment, and really good wine as well. So we went there for various reasons. I managed the one in the middle, the Bohemian Wildflower Festival. I'd looked at that advert for years. Faye and I talked about Slovenia as well, and I just thought, oh, we could go there. So the next problem was how to persuade Donald, who's not a botanist, that he would really like to go to Slovenia. So the lure was we went to cycle, and we actually had a cycle trip, which I'll talk about a bit later on. So we went to cycle. We went for me to go to the Wildflower Festival, and we went to go hill walking. So rolled all these three things up together. So what we did, and now you get one of my nice maps. So we did a 10-day cycle trip to start with, and that started at Bled, which is up here, and over 10 days we toured about up this bit's you're going into what they call the karst, although it's all limestone anyway, but the karst and the wine growing areas is in this bit. There's amazing caves here, and we ended up in Piran, which is on the coast. That's about 300, just under 400 kilometers of cycling and over 3,500 meters of ascent on that trip. It was amazing. We then went back to the Triglav National Park. That's up here again, beside Lake Bohine. It's pronounced Bohine. And we stayed there for 10 days, had an apartment, and just went walking from there. We'd no transport with us. We travelled by public transport to Slovenia and around Slovenia, apart from one day when we got a taxi and one day when we used bikes when we were staying in Bohine. We stayed in this village here, Stara Fusina. There's about 7 different little villages. That's the one we chose to stay in, and it was by far the best place to stay. So we did 10 days staying there, and I took part in 2 excursions with the International Wildflower Festival. And otherwise we walked on marked trails in the valleys and also up onto the high plateau. The Wildflower Festival ran from the 28th of May to the 8th of June. And one walk was to kind of rich hummocky meadows, fairly high up. And the other walk was along a kind of laid out botanical trail. And if you're interested, each tour, it was a half a day tour, cost me €20, and it was guided in English and Slovene. There were other things happening, a lot of things to do with food, flowers and food, photography, some workshops, art workshops. There were guided walks throughout the time of the festival. We were only there for part of it. But at the time when I was booking it, I had no idea how you got to the places or where the places were. So I took safety first and booked 2 that started beside in the village that I was going to be staying in. Afterwards, I realised I could have gone in any of them and I could have got transport because the public transport network was pretty good there. So that's why we went and what we did. And this is where I really want my notes. No idea what I was going to tell you here. So I'm going about to start to show you a selection of the flowers, meadows and landscapes we encountered during the whole trip. Now, the idea I used for the flowers was using the PlantNet app on my phone through photographs I took en route with a 50-year-old alpine flower book as a backup. Not the best way to do it, but I didn't have a botanist in my pocket, and I certainly couldn't stop all the time and spend hours looking at flowers if I'm on a cycling holiday with someone else who's not a botanist. So we started at Lake Bled, which is probably the most visited place in Slovenia. Beautiful, picturesque lake. We walked around it in, I don't know, a couple of hours the evening that we arrived there. That's where we started our cycle trip from. Beautiful lake. You could swim in it but we didn't have opportunity. Lovely flowers all the way around. And this clover here is just one of the ones I saw. I took over nearly 600 photographs and it was very difficult to choose which ones to show you. So you've just got a random selection and shown really in the order maybe I saw them on the trip. And as I said, we went through a lot of woodland, so there are an awful lot of woodland plants. But Lake Bled, picturesque with this little church on top. That's on the middle. That's an island in the middle of the lake. You can see the cloud cover. It's about to rain the next day. So we cycled. I think I've lost a picture somewhere, but never mind. From Lake Bled, we cycled into the Triglav National Park and down to the Lake Bohine area where we were to return to 10 days. And this is just a meadow on the side of the cycle path on the valley floor. We went past this meadow, when we returned, and by the time we left, it was going over. I think they seemed to be in peak condition certainly when we arrived in late May. Oh, in fact, that was before the Wildflower Festival. I can't tell. You can have a look at them. I don't know how long you want to gaze at these things. I think that's Meadow Clary there, a white version of it. There was lots of. It was either white or blue. That was a huge number of them in every meadow that we saw. I think this is Alpine Pennycress. I've got two photographs of it. I called it Alpine Pennycress in one of them and didn't in this one. But I think that's what it is. Um, Anyone can dispute me because I'm only lying on flatnet. But this spreading bellflower is just a gorgeous little thing. These would just be they were just in on the verges of our route. So all of these are just on the verges. This is a little bit along the meadow, the same meadow that we saw before. You see the mountains there on the southern side of the valley, so the kind of southern side of the valley. It's a dedicated cycle path. It was an old railway line. That's what it originally was. So it was flat as a pancake. And I just thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I really did. It was just, one of these views where you just think you're going to weep. It's so beautiful. And you can see how busy it is. I can just sit there, bike in the middle of the cycle path, and there's hardly anyone going about. The whole place was very, very quiet. These very much were certainly in the beginning of we saw the helleborine everywhere. Every forest we would see the white helleborine. The May lily not as often, but we did see it. Certainly at the beginning of our trip we saw that more frequently. But the white helleborine, I'd only seen it a few times before in this country, so it was like a weed. It really was like a weed. Oh, this is me. We'd been staying in that village behind us that night, and we're about to tackle a large climb. And 30 minutes after this photograph was taken, the rain started and it continued off and on quite heavily for the next 24 hours. So there weren't really many photographs taken on that day. My strategy, because this is where we went, my strategy when taking photographs was not to stop going up a steep hill, because you don't want to do that, but it was to stop, jump off the bike, camera out, photograph it, jump on the bike again, and then try and catch up Donald, so that I didn't have time to really look at it. And I just was taking snapshots. I mean, they weren't studied photographs because I just couldn't do that in the middle of a cycling tour in particular. So apologies for the quality of some of them. But looking at this picture, there were so many yellow flowers at the roadside. I never knew whether I was taking the photograph of the same one time and time again, or were they many different ones. But I like this picture of this one, so that's why you've got it. Again, just this is all roadside. And the rooftop, just to give you an idea of what places look like, this is the Scoffia Loca. We stayed there one night and went up. It was had been raining that morning. This was the end of the morning. It just stopped raining, and we were about to set off for Ljubljana later that morning. So I went up to the top of the tower in the museum we were in to have a look at it. So it's beautiful red roofs. We didn't see many old buildings like histo really old buildings in Slovenia, an awful lot of modern developments, or I mean, these obviously aren't modern, it's one of their older towns, but it wasn't ancient buildings like I would have expected, but very pretty. We were around the museum because it was raining, and this is a dowry chest, as it says, and I was just taken by the flowers on it. I mean, there was also lovely folkloric costumes as well, but flowers everywhere. We had a night in Ljubljana and then we went on and spent, luckily, we've got gravel bikes because we spent quite a few hours cycling through this nature reserve. This is the name of the nature reserve. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. A lot of valerian. I think that's a type of valerian. Is that right, valerian? Uh, but a lot of grass, a lot of water, beautiful bird song. We used the Merlin app to try and identify bird song, and we heard our first ever nightingale. So that was a great thing to have. It was quite a hot, this was the day after pouring rain, and it was quite a warm day. And we had to cycle all the way through this reserve before we found a tea shop, but eventually we did too. The picture on the right, the lake, um, it was a perfect circle on the map. So we went to see it because we couldn't believe it. It was perfectly circular limestone. I don't know if it would have been a kettle hole. I have no idea. Anyway, there were people fishing on it. There were folks swimming in it. I had to swim in it for that reason too. We had lunch there and then we went on. But it was just a beautiful spot. These ones you can see the meadow clearing on the right. As I say, that was everywhere. Any meadow, just floating with the blue of this. But I like this looking, if this is the tough, this little milkwort. We're now kind of approaching, we've left the Ljubljana, we're now working our way towards the karst area and the Vipavana Valley where the wine growing area is. And as soon as we started in this day, suddenly the vegetation seems to change. It just was very different from the Bohemian vegetation, very flowery. And it was a beautiful warm day after cloud and rain that we'd had. But this one on the left, there were quite a few the bee houses. There's 12 beehives in that, and the whole oh, I was trying to take the photographs. I was a bit anxious I was going to get stung by a bee, but it was a beautiful thing, and we saw several others on that day and in other days. Whether that's how all of their beehives are, other than the single ones like we have, I don't know. But certainly it's in a very good spot for pollinating plants and getting a lot of honey. The rampion there, we saw lots of different rampions. I'd never seen a rampion before. We saw this black one, at least at least two different blue ones, different types of blue ones. But I thought the formation of the petals was really beautiful. We had seen some going round Lake Bled, I think a blue one down there. I saw other blue ones later on. Now on our right, we've got Nottingham catchfly, and I was quite kind of wondered why it was called that, but apparently I looked it up because it was historically very prolific on the walls of Nottingham Castle. So that's why it's called that. I think we saw this every day, every single day as we walked through the woods or later on and as we cycled through. So I certainly saw it on our first day cycling and we'd have seen it on our last day as well. So it was everywhere. in woodland settings on road verges. This little Saxfridge on the left, however, we went to see a castle which was built in a cave, and this was at the top of the castle, and uh, and this is on the wall. The rest, that wall is part of the castle, or the castle's part of that rock cave. And this beautiful Saxfridge spot there. I think it's because there's so many cave systems that they do all sorts of things with caves. Left the caves behind, looking for somewhere to stop for lunch, and on the route, I just saw this beautiful violet blue jumped out as we were cycling along. You could see it for quite a few meters. And I just love the name of it. Just gorgeous, gorgeous. And you can see their lower mountains here. They're far, again, still wooded, but much lower than the ones in the Boheme area. Now this one on the left, I like it because I knew it straight away. I tried to grow it in my garden. I can see why it didn't flourish. Obviously, like it's a little bit drier conditions and um, less acid than I've actually got. So I don't think I'll bother it again, but it looked really nice in its natural habitat and flourished. We saw quite a bit of it. And this great hyacinth thing, I just thought it looked like it was a flower with a mohican. Couldn't believe that nature had decided it to grow like that, but there it was. It reminded me of some of the exotic grape hyacinths I've had in the garden before. They have that little tuft on the top. I've got a couple of varieties of cultivars that look a wee bit like that, but nothing like as big. This was quite a chunky thing. This is no, these are now the flowers we're seeing on this day in these meadows. It's very different. The one on the right, the burning bush, you could see it for miles. I mean, it was just for just dozens and dozens and dozens. And where it was meadow clary and other stuff like that, and on this day it was burning bush and this dianthus, which was just a wee jewel in the thing. And we started to kind of decide on a plant of the day, and the burning bush was definitely the plant this day. And the other drifts of things we saw this day was this, which I think is a dropwort of some sort. You can see it better because you can see it just fading back into the background in this photograph. And that's what the burning bush was like. I just given you a close-up of it because it was such a nice looking flower. Um, and just this day, we never saw the burning bush. We saw the dropwort again, but we never saw the burning bush again. Just that day where we were. So whether it was very site specific, I've no idea. Um, this picture, I never actually identified what they were, but I presume it's a type of knapweed. I was trying to make it a thistle, but I don't think it is a thistle. I think it's a sort of knapweed, but I just thought it was a beautiful display of them with the sun coming through. We saw quite a lot of thistles. I've not got any pictures here because they didn't turn out very nicely, but we saw a lot of yellow melancholy thistles, just doing the same as they do here with their heads really drooped over. We saw that quite a lot, and I'm sure we saw there are all sorts of other thistles that I didn't take a photograph of. This one on my left was a favourite because it was a plantain. And I always think of plantains as quite not really very exciting things. Buckthorn plantain is a bit fancy, but this I thought was pretty showy as a plantain, and it was everywhere. It was at meadows all over the place. It was one of the first ones I got to know its name. Um, it was very difficult to learn the names. Eventually, just with repetition, I would got some of them. But it was the first one's name I learned. And this other one, the bastard balm, we saw quite a lot of that again, kind of woodland clearings. Now we're getting towards the coast. We're getting down towards and we this and this Mucinet is just growing. There's a that's the side of the road there. That's where the yeah, this is the edge of the road. This is actually on the road. And fortunately for this plant, this road is now bypassed and is used just by cyclists. And we couldn't understand there's no traffic on it, and we discovered it was a major road had been built and opened. So we were on this traffic, very good, well-graded traffic-free road right down into the town of Muggia. We were just kind of skirted into Italy and back out. And the plant on the right, it was probably the day that we saw the least plants. I think I think only one new plant this particular day. This was the day we cycled to Piran on the coast. And it was all concrete, cycle paths, concrete. We were off not on the road, but there was no wildflowers to speak of, or very little, or certainly very little new ones apart from this oxalis, which I just recognise from the leaves. Now here we've finished the cycle route over. We've taken the bus up to Ljubljana and then out to, I think we took the train to Behindabis and then we took the bus to Lake Bohine. I did have a picture earlier on of Lake Bohine, but it seems to have vanished altogether. So that's Lake Bohine there, that there. And this is the view from the apartment we stayed in. And this is the night we arrived. We arrived in the evening. So it's an evening view, the sun setting down. And this is the garden of the apartment, that mown bit in the front. And then I've got a less than a 10-minute walk down the track you see in the middle of the photograph down to a swim. It was an amazing situation because we've got no buildings. I think there's a building way down in front of us, but nothing overlooked us. We're at kind of the edge of the village, about 5 minutes from the shop or the bus stop. And on our right this is the traditional haystack thing they use in this area. We saw them being this, obviously the hay's not against it, it's just been cut. So this was taken about 10 days later, just before we left this photograph. So you see they've now cut it for hay. In the first photograph, there's no hay cut. On this photograph, there is hay cut, but they've not stacked it on the hay racks. But we did see them using them. These meadows were improved grassland, so they didn't have the same richness as some of the other meadows we were seeing, but they still were not bad. So I'm trying to see what this is. We did a walk our first day. This is an orientation walk from the house, going up this wooded hillside behind the hut is Rudnica. So we're going up. That's what we're going up to just see what there is. So it was just incredible. We saw lots of the verbascum over the visit. I wasn't very sure whether they were the same variety, but they were very stately and impressive. And I've now gathered some seedling verbascums from my sister-in-law in the south of England. So we're going to see if they can survive in my garden. It's just the native, but this one with a beautiful dark centre to it. These ones we saw on the um, ascent. Now I put in this snow white woodrush for Ro to admire. It was really showy. It was shining out when you were in the woodland as we went up. Saw it a few times, not that often, but we did see it a few times. I must confess not to have really noticed any other rushes or sedges, but this was a speciality. And another clover. I've never seen. I mean, some you might recognize them, you may know them, but I'd never seen this clover before. And again, uh, it stands out. This orange lily is now a protective native alpine flower. Apparently, and it had to be protected because in the past it was almost picked to extinction. We saw it here on this woodland, and we saw it one other time later in the trip. So we weren't seeing drifts of them. There may be places where there are a lot of them, and you can see it's in a woodland setting. There's it's like a spruce or something right beside it. So it's in the woodland, in the kind of at this edge of the shade, edge of the shade. And this little mossy sandbar was just, we saw that quite a lot. Just thought it was a little beauty. So this is us at the top, and we're looking down. Um, the village that we were staying in was to the left of the picture, but you get an idea of the height. We're at 946 meters. Um, and I had a look at my diary, and what I said in my diary that day is I'd seen quite a few more new plants on the walk, but I needed to get higher to see more alpines. I actually think I've seen quite a lot of alpines already, but that's what I thought I needed to do. We could see where we are, saw the plants, and thought, now we need to get up to some of these higher things. So that's what we did. Tried to do any for some of the time. So the very next day, um, we started off on this fabulous walk. This is a limestone gorge, amazing rock formations and beautiful. You can see the green pools. Unfortunately, it was forbidden to swim there. I would definitely have jumped in, but easy path up the gorge, very very well. It's one of their most popular walks. Very well graded, very steps and gravel and rocks. Not difficult footwork. And it took us higher. You can see us looking down. I'm standing on a bridge at this point. I'm looking down at the gorge, and then I'm going up the valley. So we're kind of walking uphill. Most of the people were walking up to go and have a look at the waterfall. We didn't bother looking at the waterfall because we thought we'd get a lot of them in Scotland. But what we were doing was heading up to the another higher plateau. And on the way, we saw these. The picture I had of this whole plant was completely out of focus, but maybe people know what Todfield's asphodel looks like. Well, that's what it looks like close up, but it was a wee tiny thing. But I liked the fact that I could get the beetles in focus and the flower head. There are apparently 3 different types of Solomon's seal in the area in Slovenia. Now, I think I saw them all, but this is the one I took the photograph of. I saw the one we get at home, and I saw the other one as well. Can't remember what it's called. Very pretty when you start to take close-ups. I have that an attachment to on my camera, and I did use that a lot. So we're still we've now got it just to the entrance of this plateau. The first plateau we're trying to get to, And there's this little stream rushing down and joining the main river that we've been walking up beside. And it was like suddenly being at a rock garden. So you can see the water behind this one, the limestone rocks, and then this little sacrilege on the corner. There were thistles there, was alpine figwort, was all sorts of things. And I think this is probably where this orchid was as well. I had a look at I didn't I couldn't really get a flora of Slovenia. I got a book published by the Wildflower people, Flower Festival people, and they had published a leaflet about orchids of Slovenia, and they've got of this area, and there's over 40 pictures of different types of orchid. Well, I took very few. I saw a few. I took photographs of some of them, so this was a beautiful one. And I discovered it didn't look like our fragrant orchid because they've a different one. Um, anyway, this is the first place we were attempting to get to was the Planina Vosges. And as you can see, there are chalets round it. There wasn't a single person there. I think they must be holiday, they're used by Slovenes maybe for holidays or for weekends. But we came out of walking up this gorge into this expanse, huge expanse of. So the one with Donald and we're looking forward, and we're actually not going to go up there. We go up the hillside on the right that you see. That's where we're actually intending. That's our plan. Because you remember I said I was wanting to go high. Well, we were trying to go up to a much higher, a lot of meadows. But you can see the flowers in this one here. And what I would say is the yellow rattle seemed to be an awful lot bigger than the yellow rattle. I think everything was a lot bigger. And I'll show you an example of that further on. But just acres of these flowers. I mean, you could spend a day just there. And that's the thing. If you went with a botanist, you would hardly move. And this is me. I've got my camera out. I was just about to take a photograph. This is typical Elizabeth pose in this trip. You can see it's warm. We were apart from the day. I think we had some rain, but it was only cold when we were raining when we went up a mountain. But apart from that, it was t-shirt and shorts weather the whole time. Not overbearingly hot, just pleasantly warm. And you can see how busy it is. These are some hard to choose what to photograph. So I think they said it was Sweet William. It looked to me like it might have been, but could be something else. But you can see the size of those yellow rattle there. There's only one herd of cows in this area still brought up to the summer alpine pasture. And it clearly wasn't that one. You'll see a picture of the one they go to. We saw that later on. So the picture on the left, we've come up from the grass you see, what you see down under the trees. We're climbing up. I've come up there. It took us 2 hours to climb from that valley floor to the next valley, the level we were actually planning to go to. And on this walk up through this woodland, Donald's 20 meters ahead of me, and he saw a bear lumbering away from a burn we were about to cross. Burns aren't common. In fact, they're very uncommon in this part of Slovenia. They're mostly down in the southwest corner, which we never went to. I asked about bears, and I was told there weren't any. I said, well, but my partner saw one yesterday. And it's not very it's not really difficult to make a mistake with a bear because I did say to him, well, what did it look like then? He said it was big, brown, and lumbering. Well, I said, well, it wasn't a tourist. So, but it wasn't impossible. And we were on at this point, we were kind of on the edge of a more remote bit. The bit right round Lake Boheen is got marked, built paths, maintained paths. As you go further towards Triglav, they're not, that it's far less busy. And I presume the bear had wandered out for there weren't many burns. There wasn't much running water. He or she must have gone out to get a drink at the burn and was going back up. And by the time I caught up, the bear was out of sight and was never to be seen again. And this little orchid here on the right, the burnt tip orchid, when I saw the first one, where I'm now at the plateau, I'm now done my 2 hours walking, now at the next plateau, what's it called? So I'm about 1,200 meters now. So much higher than I was on my wee hill the first day. We'd done about 780 meters of climbing to get here. And when I saw this orchid, the first time I saw it, I thought, it's got a virus. There's something wrong with it. And then I saw more of them, and I thought, probably not a virus, Elizabeth, probably what it's meant to look like. And this was the only, I think this is, no, we did see them another day, but they weren't very common. Didn't see them very often, but very distinctive. They jumped out once you saw one, you then started to see the other ones. They kind of jumped out at you in the landscape. So we're on the Ustavinka Plateau, which is where we'd got to. And these are just more, as we walked across this landscape and then made our way back down the forest through a big forest. So another green thing, another green and yellow thing. But what I liked was the mountain flax was just gorgeous and some nice kidney vetch in front of it. But the mountain flax was just beautiful, beautiful sky blue color. It was magnificent. Here we're kind of about to kind of start going down again. This is a chapel on the left, and we're looking. The big pointy one on the right, I think, is the peak of Triglav, which is the highest mountain in Slovenia. We had no intention of going anywhere near it. All my brother and all his family have all been up it. It's very scary, very rocky, very exposed. No way that we're going near it. It's about that. Well, I saw a sign that it said it was maybe 8 hours. I don't know whether it was 8 hours to the hut. I think it would have taken us a lot longer than eight hours to get there. It's looks like a lot of walking to get there. So that's what I meant. From here, it's far more. You're going into going into far more remote country. So that's where the bear is probably lives, and it's got come down to the burn. Because over here, far less people were going, and it wasn't exactly crowded for us. Don't think this would. I'm not sure if this would have been the common route to Triglav. We then went on to walk around Lake Boheen, which is there's a path all the way around it. 75% of it's right beside the shore. Other 25% it's above the road that goes along the southern shore of Boheen. So the northern shore, which I think of that's right, which we went round first, nearest us, was much nicer, but walking, far more flowers, a lot of stuff. And I just really, really liked this plant. And I liked, this is just an enlargement of the flower head because I thought it didn't look anything like that. Well, I took a close up. I thought it was stunning. And we saw quite a number of these. Again, as everything, everything's in the woodland. Unless it's a meadow, it's a woodland. Now, the next day, I was going on one of my botanical trips with the Wildflower Festival to the Vogar Plateau, which is at about 1,000 meters. Now, because it was the Wildflower Festival trip, we actually met at the tourist office in Sarafasina and got a minibus. There were 12 of us, I think, including the guide. And she was taking us to see some special hummocky meadows. So these were on the way. Um, what I would say about the botanical trip was it was because I'd been using PlantNet and this old book, it was really nice to hear her, she'd pointing out the plants and naming them and realizing them that I actually was naming some of them properly. The one she was pointing at was ones I already seen before. Most of them. By this time, we'd been in Slovenia for a fortnight, so I'd already seen a lot of things, and I could recognize things. I maybe couldn't tell you the names, but when she named them, I thought, oh yeah, I remember that's what I call that too. So it was reassuring. It was certainly reassuring. So where we'd got to here, so 1,000 meters, Donald had walked up there the day before on his own, and I was having a day off, and it'd taken him 2 hours to get there. So that's the minibus did it in 20 minutes. And this little beauty was why we were there. These are naturally occurring, they're hummocks, kind of small hummocks in the landscape, naturally occurring, so very limey, the hummocky bit. And most of the hummocky meadows have been destroyed by agriculture, by cultivation. So obviously the ones lower down, but these ones are up where people wouldn't have been, cultivating for crops. They would have grazed them perhaps, but they wouldn't have been grazed them definitely, but they wouldn't have been cultivating them. So the hummocky meadows have survived. Very, very rich, limey environment. And this is the only one of these orchids that we saw. Our leader had been out looking for more a couple of days earlier, but this is the only one there was. I don't think it's always the only one there is, but there was the only one that was that day. But it's certainly the highlight of the walk, and really one of the highlights of the trip. Um, and I put in the moonwork just to show you the scale of it. I mean, I thought, think of these wee tiny things that we see here, and that giant one I saw there. So it just shows you that why things are such a rich habitat, such rich growing conditions for these flowers. This is at the edge of the plateau. We're looking down Lake Boheen on the right, and where I'm actually staying is the village on the left, and I'm one of these probably one of these there. That's the little building we were in. There's a in this bit of the Trickle National Park, you can't build high-story buildings. So the highest building was on 3 floors that we saw in this area at all. So it's kind of but none of the villages are very big. The village where the bus goes to from, if you're coming from Ljubljana, is down here at this bit of the lake. That's where the bus goes to. Then it goes round this shore of the lake to the very top. Um, and then there's a local circular bus service that is a bus route for schools, but it goes 3 or 4 times a day in 2 directions. And it links all the villages. And we used it for going out, exploring, and walking. The next day, after this trip day, we decided we were going to go. I think this is where we went. I think it might be, we were heading for here. We never got there, but that's where we were heading for. I think it's that one. Um, we're going up a hill called Krnapirst. There are not many vowels in Slovene, which is well known uh, for rare alpines. Oops, there it is. It's well known for rare alpines. One side of it is north facing, which is the side we were climbing up from the Bohine Valley. The other side is south facing, so it gets all the kind of Adriatic weather, and it's got the very top of it. Of it has some other stone in it that makes a very rich landscape. So it's an awful lot of rare alpines up there on the summit ridge. I asked about it when I was on the botanical walk the day before, and I was told, well, you won't see anything up there. They're not there till the alpines aren't out there until mid-June to mid-July. So we thought, oh, well, we'll just go anyway, see what we see. So this is some of the things that we saw en route up the hill. Uh, we took a taxi to the roadhead that day because that saved us an hour's walk from where the bus would have dropped us. We walked up to a refuge, which took us another 2 hours. And then after another hour, we started to get on into an alpine meadow, and then we did it more up. So the Alpine roads here were starting to see us as well, don't know how many feet it was, but it was 3 hours up the hill. It was the most fabulous, fabulous walk. It was raining. Um, Vis Narcissus got the plant of the day accolade. We couldn't believe it. Um, we we It was so showy. We'd left Star Officina in the sunshine, but showers started when we got to the mountain refuge. We stopped at the mountain refuge after 2 hours and had a cup of tea and a slab of apple strudel that the chap had just taken out of the oven. And then we set off um, up the path the rest of our ascent. And it continued to be showery the rest of the time. So there's some water on the leaves and petals. So these are just this is a view just looking down and towards, this is the next hill along from where we are, 2 hills along from where we are. Lovely to be up high, lovely to see these. So that's hazel and flower, and we saw other things. So that's, I'm saying it's springtime. It certainly seems to be still springtime up here. Um, we saw more of these two, the past flower and the ox, that as we went higher up, we saw, meadows of them. Well, not meadows, plural, a meadow of them. So this is what I mean. We got to this level. What I would say is this is a bit with flowers on it. There were other bits that were black where the snow had just melted and no vegetation had come through. And then there were other areas where they just start to have shoots coming through. So I could understand why higher up, because higher up on the summit ridge, the flowers weren't going to be out till mid-June because they would have been, they would still have been snow covered till they weren't snow covered by then, but they would have been snow covered till probably a few weeks before. Um, I thought about some yellow pansy at the front of the photograph, but I can't see it. Is that it? Maybe it there. That's maybe the yellow pansy. It looks like an oxlip again. Maybe lots of drifts of these things. And my favourite, I thought it was a beautiful little thing. Never heard of this one. I just loved it. I've been battered by quite a lot of rain that day. It's still standing up, quite the thing. And I think this is the beginning of an auricular theatre with this one. If you look at the picture on the right, there's some sort of daphne there. Again, I would have thought a spring flower. And behind it, that kind of scary looking peak. This is what we were aiming for. And we got to about, I think, probably about here. I reckon we got to 150 meters from the summit. But we turned back. It was raining at this point. We turned back. Uh, a combination of rain, a sloping, slippy limestone slabs to cross with a wee drop, the gully that we're coming up below us. So we decided we'd just call it a day there and make a cautious descent back to the valley floor. So this photograph is taken, I've got a note. This photograph is taken from where we saw the ox lips further on. So we did it, I don't know, another 45 minutes or an hour to get to that point. We thought, no, we're coming back. This, I think, in the very back is the Triglav group. So we're quite far away from where we were a few days ago. And I think this must be some sort of saxifrage, but it's not in focus. I'm afraid I just took it as foreground for the mountain view. And you're looking down to the Behin Valley, so you've got an idea of how far we've climbed up. Now, we didn't have a taxi back, so we had to walk right down to that valley floor to get a bus back to where we were staying. Um, and on the left is just some trees I saw on the way down, on the path down. The next day, I did my second botanical walk with the Wildflower Festival. It wasn't one I would have chosen. It was along a named the Wallmitzer Trail, which is named after some botanist. Plants there are all labelled. And I didn't learn much about the plants that were there, but the guy who was the guide was talking for he was an ecologist, and so he was far more interested in the landscape than the actual individual flowers. He pointed them out. He talked a lot about the landscape and the development, geologically, the development of it, about the use of it. Um, but he did point out the fly orchid, which I had seen one before in the Burren with Faye, but that's not the only one I saw on the trip. There was a group of them. It wasn't just this particular one. And I certainly would never have seen it without his assistance. But he very much we walked from this trail. We had to start going up the gorge, and then we hived off to the left along this trail. Very, very easy walking, not very far. We'd walked from the village where we met, we'd walked up there. We walked down to Lake Boheen, and we're standing above the lake, and he's looking at the pasture or the field below where our apartment was, and he's saying, if you left them for 10 years, it'd just be solid woodland. So kind of that's it. It has to be treated in some way. Otherwise, he says it'll just all be trees. But obviously it wasn't. They were looking after it enough. So if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have booked in that trip. I booked in one of the other tours going to somewhere more adventurous. But I didn't know at the time that I could have got there probably by public transport or by taxi. Taxi weren't very much. The taxi we took to go up Kernapurst, I think it was €30 for the two of us to get there. So it felt like they were quite reasonably priced. I'm trying to think where we were going the next day. The next day we took bikes. Our apartment, the guy that we're staying in, the guy who owned it lent us a couple of bikes. So we cycled to the head of about 10 kilometres up to the head of Lake Boheen. And then we took a walk again up the plateau. and we followed zigzags, a zigzag pony track that had been built during the First World War. This was the frontier line of the of Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so the pony track was built to supply the frontier line, and there was all sorts of things up there. There were buildings that were a hospital for military hospital, um, which weren't obviously any more in use. So it was a very well graded track, but it did take us several hours to get up and 66 zigzags. So by this time, I've seen most of the plants that are in flower when I'm going through woodland. So this is one I hadn't seen, which is why it's there. Nice color. Um, in this woodland, there were a lot of, and in fact, quite a few woodlands, there were a lot of hellebores. And the Slovenian guide a few days ago had told me that there were the the Christmas rose. So that's the hellebore that's just grows wild in woodland. We saw um, the faded flowers of it, but obviously nothing was in flower at that time. We saw lots of ferns too. I don't think no ferns have made the cut, but we did see ferns, lots of ferns. So we get up the 66 zigzags and everything changes. And this is what it's like. It's like amazing. These mountain avens were just tons of them, just tons and tons of them. Again, there's no one there. No, we maybe saw two other people on the path. So you're not trying to avoid the crowds. You could have got a cable car onto this plateau, not the bit we've gone to, but you could get a cable car up there. But Donald doesn't do cable cars, and we were fit enough to walk up. If we'd taken the cable car up, though, we could have gone much further and probably seen more, but that's maybe for another year. And what the photographs I've got are just a tiny, tiny proportion of what I saw. You couldn't take photographs of them all. You can see Donald's about to point something out to me. He was very good at point. Have you seen this one? Have you taken a picture of that one? So he's very good at pointing things out. It was another lovely day. These gentians just pop. The colour is just amazing. Not all over the place, but a lot this day. This day we saw, I would say, this day and the Crown of Perth day were just amazing for mountain flowers. But then these were the 2 days we were the highest, I would say, and not more in a kind of rocky environment than a meadow environment that we were in these other plateaus with meadows. So it was a different sort of landscape. This, what looks like a road, yes, it was part of the 66 zigzag road, the pony track road. You wouldn't take anything more than a pony on it now, I wouldn't have thought. But it was a real, it followed the contours. At this point, we're following the contours around to get to where the war World War War buildings were. So you have amazing views to these rocky, very scary looking rocky limestone hills on the left. So this is just looking down off the path as we walk by. I felt it was just like a little window box that had been planted up for us. Another yellow job. Now, you had not seen this one before. It's but it was the intensity of the yellow just drew you to it. But there was really stiff competition that day. There were so many little beauties on that path. It was quite stiff to competition to select some photographs, and actually I couldn't photograph everything. Wouldn't move. This is where we stopped for lunch. We stopped in a boulder for lunch, and these ones were just at our feet. These globularia. There's also a little tiny Daphne, and there was something else I can remember seeing down there. Where uh, just there, just on the ground. And then we eventually turned back, and this is nice. And there's another refuge up here. There's not refuges. They're very handy for us for a refreshment. So, and this is from the balcony of the refuge, and you can see that Slate Boheen there. We are staying up here, no, up here somewhere. That's where we're staying. So we've cycled from there 10 kilometers and then walked for all these hours up to here. So it's a fantastic viewpoint and great to get a drink as well. After expeditions up the hill, we're now staying in the valley for a bit, and we had a walk connecting up different villages. And this red helleborine is the only one that we saw on the trip. Um, I don't think they're rare, but we never saw one. And it was in a shady spot, uh, again in a clearing in the woodland. That looks like hellebore leaves there, doesn't it? And the bellflower there is in one of the meadows. So we're going through linked meadows to get to the next to along the valley floor, and then we've started from the house, and then we're getting the bus back. A bit lowering with clouds, less flowery. This is later on, this is getting later. So the things we'd have seen at the beginning are maybe starting to go over, and different things dominate. Presumably that's because of the soil. Not hadn't seen so many oxeye daisies before. I think this is the same meadow, looking slightly different, and you can see the blue of the meadow clarion. Well, I can in that photograph. And despite the kind of gloomy looking sky we've got, it did stay dry, and it was really nice not to be pecking for hours up a slope. I think if speedwells looked like this, I would be able to recognize them. It was just a beautiful blue, and see a mixture of the white and the blue meadow clary together in this one. We're getting near the end. And this was our lunch spot. We sat in the grass. Not bad. I think it's one of those dropworts. And a lot, I think this is some sort of garlic flower, this one here. Um, this is our final day's walking. It was damp. It was damp. You'll see later it's damp. And this saxifrage I saw, we just got off the bus. We got a bus. We're walking between two villages over a call back down to the second village, bus back. So, and this saxifrage was just at the start of the walk. And I put the one of the path into that wasn't the best path. It reminded us some walking in the Pyrenees, but quite slippy because it was wet. But usually the paths were better easier for walking. I think this was a less walked route that we were on this day. You can see from the haze it's actually raining. We had a wee snack. We came across an empty chalet with an overhang and a bench so we could shelter under it and sit and have a snack. Lots of butterfly orchids. And that ramp, one of the blue rampions in the front, slightly out of focus. Just focusing on the butterfly orchids there. Um, so that's just somewhere to stop. And this next one I think is higher up. This is the same meadow. We're just starting off again. We got absolutely soaked to the skin just walking through this. So more yellows, buttercuppy sort of size. And we saw lots of that. What's that one? What's that yellow one called? Is it goats? Something goats, goat something. So a lot of that. Oh, and I went to go back. Can I go back to the last one, do you think? This strappy leaf here, that's autumn crocus. We kept on seeing these strappy leaves and we couldn't think what it was, but we finally saw one with a bud at the base. And we reckon there's another one there. There's quite a lot, and this is where we saw a lot of them here, and we could not think what it was, but I think they were autumn crocus. At least that's what PlantNet thought. And when I looked it up, I thought it looked pretty good. So back to this one. Um, these aren't very remote. You can see there's a car in that beside that chalet. I think it was obviously occupied. It wasn't high up like the other ones. Looks like fragrant orchids there. This is the end of our last day. I said that there was a village, there was one herd of cows came up for the alpine pasture. Well, this is, you can't see them in the photograph, but this is where they come. They were just up there. We'd walked up this road and then we came back and come up this little hilltop for lunch. Hardly a daisy in sight. Um, but the cows themselves, they're brought up there every year. We had their cheese. The cheese in Slovenia that we came across was horrible. Apart from this cheese, it was really nice cheese. So these cows, I think, produced the cheese that we enjoyed and was available in the shops in Boheen. We didn't see anywhere else, and stuff is like other places, ghastly, highly processed, tasteless stuff. But they had nice cheese, but that's probably because they had eaten every single flower there was to be seen. Big village. There was a hostel up at the top of the village, the other end of the village. It obviously was occupied. There was that road just behind where Donald's sitting. You could take a car to because we walked down. We met someone with a car, and from that point, you had to walk. Someone was delivering something down with a wheelbarrow, so there was no car access down into the village itself. But it did feel like a village Heidi would have lived in. That's what I thought. Um, I kept on looking for her, but she wasn't there. So this is the end. So thank you, everyone, for listening. What I think I learned from this is, first of all, get a better flower book. A 50-year-old flower book, you know, reproduction compared to nowadays is just not good enough. So even though I had one, I should have just invested 25 quid or 30 quid in a brand new one. It might have helped me. Secondly, bring a botanical companion along as well. We wouldn't have gone so far and done so much, but I certainly would have looked at the flowers a bit more closely and being able to identify themselves with the book and my botanical companion rather than PlantNet. But PlantNet was fine, didn't answer me back, and didn't contradict me. But certainly, and the third thing was take photos in a landscape format if you're going to be doing a slide presentation because they come out better. The shape of the slide presentation is landscape, so take them that way. My photographs are snaps. I'm not a great photographer. I don't take many photographs generally. So I wasn't taking my time, as I said, because I was rushing off the bike or rushing to catch Donald up a lot of the time. So apologies, they're not the quality of a photographer, but certainly landscape format rather than portrait.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was fabulous. What a beautiful country and what beautiful flowers. And you've certainly given us a great flavour of what the place was like and how to get around and everything. So thank you very much. I don't know if we do a round of applause now, or we'll have
Yeah.
another one later. But
Thank you.
are you able to answer questions if anybody's got a question? But
I can answer any, well, I can try. It depends on the question. Don't ask me to any more detail about the flowers, for goodness sake.
I'll say the only one I was going to ask you about maps. You know, do they have good maps for these walks and things? And
The tourist office produces us a map, which we use, which was very useful. And also, we also discovered a walking app, a Slovenian walking app. And between the two of those, which meant the walking app allowed me to download a physical map onto my phone, so we knew exactly where we could know
oh
exactly where
wow,
we were
okay.
when we went up onto the plateau. So a combination of those two things, it was fine. They were signposted like they are I've done a lot of walking in France. So they tell you where
You've
the,
got a
the path is
signpost and
going and
dots of
how,
paint and stuff.
not the paint, but they have
Oh,
a lot of signposts in this bit. We walked in the map and the map we got from the tourist office showed you the signposted routes.
mm.
So it was all that was all very straightforward, and it was very straightforward to get about. As I say, there was a great bus service. It took us a while to work out what the timetable meant, um, but we did work it out, or rather, Donald worked it out because buses sometimes went in two
Mm.
directions, the same place. Um, so yeah, the walking
Did they
was
did they take your bikes on the bus?
no, they were
No,
just little
you just had
buses.
to. Yeah,
You weren't There was nowhere very far because the buses were just going within the locality, so there was nowhere very you weren't going very far.
not a long distance. No. Oh well.
The
I'll
villages are
stop.
only a few miles apart. I mean, the only time the bikes we borrowed when we were there were too big for us because our landlord and his girlfriend were substantially taller than Donald and I.
Oh, wow. So you
So
did take your own bike.
We could have hired bikes in the main village, Ribsek Lev, but we weren't planning to cycle. We'd done our cycling. We were planning to walk. There wasn't much. If you wanted to go mountain biking, it would be a paradise for that too, but I hate mountain biking. So we were planning to walk, so we weren't going to hire bikes again. So there was no need to have bikes. If you're going to the places I went to, you don't need them.
Oh,
Buses or
great.
taxi.
Great to hear of a place with good public transport. Has anybody else got a question? Oh,
Okay, Claire here. You partly answered my question just at the end of your talk because I was looking in the long distance views to see if there were any sheep grazing. Well, you mentioned cattle. So, I mean, these vast areas of flowers are
Nothing.
staggering. No,
Mhm.
no sheep, no. Or just cattle, you said
No,
at the end there.
no. I mean, there was a herd of cows down in kept in the village we were staying in, and they were taken out every day to the shores of to fields beside Lake Boheen and then taken back at night. So literally
Right.
they walked through the village, but I can't say we saw many sheep at all. I can't
Didn't
think
see
of sheep.
any.
Can't think of sheep. When we cycled through a lot of the country, I can't, sheep, but I wasn't looking for sheep.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't looking for sheep.
So do
But we
you
did
think
see a
that,
salamander and we saw various butterflies.
Oh, yes.
yes,
Um, and I saw a dead snake.
Uh-huh.
hmm.
do you think that Britain would have been like that, Rue, before there were cattle and sheep?
Me, well, it
Yes.
probably would have been more like that, but not. I mean, I think the thing about Britain is it's got such an impoverished flora to start with, being a sort of offshore island, that once you get to mainland Europe, there's a fantastically greater number of species species available to make up these lovely meadows and things. But certainly I think Britain's lost a lot through the intensity of our agriculture and the degree to which every square inch is grazed by something, whether it's sheep or deer or whatever. But obviously in Slovenia they don't have the same intensity. Well, being if the whole country's mountainous, it's much more difficult to have the kind of intensive agriculture that we're able to have in this country. So yeah, I don't think we would have ever been quite the same as that, but not quite as impoverished as we are now.
No deer either, Elizabeth.
I don't know. They've got a lot of bears. Maybe the bears clear off the deer. And they have wolves as well. I've read a book recently about someone who walked the track. A wolf travelled from Slovenia to Italy.
Oh, it was on the radio. They had that.
That's right.
Reading his, I think was it him or somebody reading his book about the wolf that travelled all the way across.
So I had a look. I mean, it didn't go into the bit of Slovenia we were in, but it was interesting just to read that book. So those animals surely will keep the deer down if there are deer.
Yes, and if you've never had the kind of tradition of sporting deer management that we've had in this country, where people really maintained artificially high numbers of deer, even though we don't have the predators. They probably never had anything like the. I mean, people from mainland Europe are always amazed when they hear the deer densities that we've got. So haven't you missed out a decimal point or something? It's like 10 times more per square kilometre than there are in places like Germany, and that again much more forested places really, where the deer just live at lower densities. Anyway, we've now gone 9 o'clock, so I think unless anybody else has got one more question, we better wind up here. And I'll just make an announcement about the next talk, which is on Tuesday the 10th of February. And unfortunately, the speaker that we were to have had talking about the flora of South Africa has unfortunately died just before Christmas. But we've had an offer from Jane Sayers, one of our own members, to give a talk about her work with Trees for Life. And I think she'll probably be talking about a project on native pine that she's been working on, as I think that's the project that she's going to talk about. So that's on the Tuesday, the 10th of February, sort of a month from now. But otherwise, let's just say thanks very much to Elizabeth for a fabulous talk. And I think we'll all be booking our next ticket to Slovenia. I can't say we'd like to organise a botany group meeting in Slovenia. That might be going a bit too far on the logistical side. But anyway, if you want to give Elizabeth a round of applause. Thanks very much. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Wonderful.